just as a side note, this is to brothers who have been married, I don't know whether that's 5 years, 10 years. The story always seems to be the same. I got married in Bangladesh or Pakistan or Nigeria or wherever it might be, and it's not limited to those countries, but essentially brothers in the West who got married abroad, and they struggled in their marriage. They're considering polygamy, and then so many years down the line they decide that they're gonna get another wife. And I'm focusing specifically on that scenario. I know there's lots of other scenarios, but I don't want to I don't want to focus on that. I want to just focus on one thing at a time. Okay, so with that consideration, one of the things that happens is that those brothers, when they're going out to find somebody, usually you've been married for 20, 10, 20, 30 years. That's my baby in the background. You've got used to living with that person. You've got used to the conflict. And you can say all that you want that you've not got used to that, but you have, because you've stayed there for 20 years. You've actually managed to stay there. Something in you has allowed you to continue. And that's not, I'm not judging that. I'm not saying that's a good or bad. I'm just saying, really look at yourself. Okay? And with that, our attachments are formed in lots of different ways. Some are formed with positive associations, and some can be formed through chaos, through, there are people who can fight and have problems, and, almost like if there isn't any problems, and then there's a problem. Really ask yourself, why am I looking for a second wife? And is it another wife, not even a second wife, another wife? It has to be another wife. And you have to understand that what I see brothers doing is that they're so fed up of all of the parts of the marriage that didn't work, that they want to just pick and choose the bits that do work. Okay? So you want the friendship, and you might want the intimacy, and you might want some of that newness. You might want somebody to talk to or share your problems with, and somebody who understands you. And that's all good and well, but you can't just have those things and miss out on all the other aspects that marriage brings. All the other things of looking after children, of maintaining someone, of dealing with their emotions. You can't ignore any of that. You can't just turn around and pick the bits that you think are going to work and the bits that you aren't. And as hard as it is, this is dunya, and our religion has obligations put on us. And instead, what I would invite you to do is to think about for yourself, have I done, and I'm really, really, this is hard for me to say, but self-reflection, like, have I worked on myself? Have I looked at the things that are in me with this current wife? If I'm that, unhappy, then what are the things that keep me in the marriage? And if it is children, and if it is society, and if it is your parents, then you've got to ask yourself, what sort of person am I that makes me choose those things to stay in this marriage, and I'm still unhappy? Because it's, for the sisters on the other side, it's like having your cake and eating it. And it, you might not think this, but it really hurts a sister that you get married to. If you marry her I know sisters who have been married a week, a month, a year, and you think that you get married in secret, and then the other wife finds out, and you've got your existing issues, which is things that you weren't able to resolve. That's the reason you went for the second wife, right? So what makes you think that when your first wife finds out about the second, that somehow you're going to be able to resolve that? It's just going to be chaos. And I see that the sadness of it is, the brothers very rarely leave the first. It's the second that they leave, because the commitment's less. the entanglement, the years of things that you've done daily, good or bad, it's harder to walk away from that than it is to walk away from somebody you just met. But the truth is, that was still emotion and commitment, and all it does is leave another person broken because of a choice that, you know, you made. And I am saying that you made. I know that sisters have a choice as well, but brothers, you know, men have an obligation, like a responsibility over women. Women can be emotional and they want love, especially if they've gone through something. And although the man is seeking those things, it's also easier for the man to walk away. He's got his other wife. If you leave that second, she's got nothing left. She's still on her own. If anything, in a worse position because she trusted somebody and that person betrayed her. My main thing is, as I think about this, is to brothers, is to say, really think about, you know, what's actually the root of what's going on for me. What am I not looking at myself? What am I not facing within myself that is causing me to look outside? Because what we don't want to do is, and it has happened, is polygamy has a very bad rep, you know. It has people are really against it. Part of it maybe the way our Western societies are set up, but I think a lot of it is in these ways that we're going about it as well. If we were doing it right and families got the support and both women, you know, were open to that, and there was a man that was both emotionally able to manage those two relationships and financially, then actually you would see great benefits in doing so, because the children and the society, you know, the structures would be supported by the family unit. But that's not what's happening. You're going into it knowing that your wife, the existing wife, is so against it. And it's just another thing that you're creating in the marriage, another event or problems to extend what's already going on. So I would be really honest with myself, if, you know, and honest with yourself if you're considering it, to really think about, like, how can I maybe get some counselling? And that's not, you know, I think that as well has got a bad rep. Oh, get some counselling because somehow there's something, you know, wrong with you, or you're a bit doolally and all of this. It's not like that at all. Counselling is a process of self-reflection. It enables you to sit with yourself and really make a change, to look at what's gone on, look at the choices that you made. Because counselling is about you facing yourself. And that's why a lot of people don't counselling and don't want to go to counselling. You know, we make all the jokes, and you see it especially among men. I don't need counselling, it's wishy-washy, it's for women and all of this. And really, those are the ones that probably need it the most, because there's something uncomfortable in them that they don't want to look at. So please, if you are in a marriage where you're unhappy, you're seeking a second, really think about what are those things that I'm looking for. And, you know, sometimes it's just about shifting perspective. Like, I know that I got married abroad, or I know that I don't, but there's these things in this marriage that are good, and maybe I won't get everything. And if you then, you know, after all of the deliberation, you consider marrying a second wife, do it the right way, do it openly, do it with your first wife knowing. And if then she chooses to not stay in that marriage, that's a choice that she gets to make. But that's where you've got to do the work. You've got to be sure that this is where I'm at. Like, I'm not leaving you. I don't want to, you know, I still want to support you. But this is something that I have to do because of where I'm at with this, with myself. It's got to be about, you can't be any blame on her. Because if you go to blame her, trust me, women, we're not much different to one another. You will still find flaws in another person and another person and another person, because you haven't done the work inside of yourself. Another thing that I was speaking to my husband about, and he really advocates this, that a marriage is a marriage, and what happens is that when you go into a second, and I see this with sisters, they say, oh, the guy was an imam, and he was practicing, and he was religious, and it seems that we pick out the bits that we want the sister to hear, and some of those bits are things like, oh well, we can put any contract in, and I can say that I'm only going to give you this much money, and I'm only going to see you this many days, and women see the Islamic words and the Islamic dress, and they're looking at that with hope. They're trusting that. And if you are somebody who is using, alhamdulillah, able to reference to Islam and dress according to, a modest way, and you are wanting to do that in representation of your deen, then the last thing you want to do is take on a sister, and then she's left with this idea that it was a religious person that did this to her. And then what happens is when brothers get married, they don't see both marriages as equal, or the same. And women talk about this a lot, like, oh, they should be equal, and they get it a little bit wrong, like almost like everything should be exactly the same. That's not what we're talking about in equality, and I can do another video about that. What we're talking about is the if it got to a place where, I had to make a choice, I would give up the second. But the first one seems to be the significant one, the important one, the first, so therefore we keep that wife. Would you use the same process for the second? So you've managed to stay with somebody for 20 years, and you're saying you've had all of these problems. Would you stay with another wife that you got and hash it out for 20 years? If you are prepared to do that, then go into a marriage. But if you're not prepared to do that, if that's not where your mind's at, then it's not the right choice, because people get hurt. It's not a joke to anybody to marry someone, especially a sister who's gone through so much. It's painful.